Hey guys, my name is Rena and today I'm going to be teaching about proving geometric relationships. Okay, so first off, let's start off by learning all about flowchart proofs. So in the last video that I made, I talked about two-column proofs. At the end of that, I told you guys that there would be more types of proofs, and this is one of them. So another proof format is a flowchart proofs. It uses boxes and arrows to show the flow of a logical argument. Like in a two-column proof, you go one by one down. You just write it in a flow with boxes and arrows. Each reason for the statement is justified below the statement. Alright, and after that, let's take a look at the right angles congruence theorem. So this says that all right angles are congruent. That's it. Okay, so proving the right angles congruence theorem. So you're given that angle 1 and 2 are right angles, and you have to prove that angle 1 and 2 are congruent. You have to use the given flowchart proof to write a two-column proof. Pause the video, give it a shot, come back for the right answer. Okay, so now that you're back, so first off, let's start with the two-column proofs. So first, let's split it into our statements and reasons. So first, we're given that angle 1 and 2 are right angles. That's our given. And the next, measure of angle 1 is equal to 90 degrees, and the measure of angle 2 is 90 degrees. It's the definition of right angles. And also, we're using all the flowchart proofs and the statements for the two-column proof as well. And then angle 1 and angle 2 are equal. That's a transitive property of equality. And then finally, angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's a definition of congruent angles. So this is how it would look like for a flowchart proof, and then writing a two-column proof based on that. Alright, so now, congruent supplements and complements theorem. So first off, the congruent supplements theorem. If two angles are supplementary to the same angle, then they are congruent. If angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, and angle 2 and angle 3 are supplementary, then angle 1 and 3 are congruent. That's because they're both supplementary to angle 2. Now the congruent complements theorem. So we learned before the supplements mean that two angles sum up to 180 degrees. Complements mean that they sum up to 90 degrees. If two angles are complementary to the same angle, then they are congruent. It's the same thing except they're complementary. If angle 4 and 5 are complementary with each other, and angle 5 and 6 are complementary with each other, then angle 4 and angle 6 are congruent because they're both complementary to angle 5. Okay, so now proving a case of congruent supplements theorem. So you're going to use the given two-column proof to write a flowchart proof that proves that two angles are supplementary to the same angle are congruent. So you're given that angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary, and angle 2 and angle 3 are supplementary. Prove that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. Pause the video, give it a shot, come back for the right answer. Okay, so now, moving on to the flowchart proof. So here, this is how we would write it. So we could write it, we could combine these two into two boxes, but I included it in 4 separate boxes connected to the same thing. So first, angle 1 and 2 are supplementary, angle 2 and 3 are supplementary. Those are our givens. Measure of angle 1 plus angle 2 is equal to 180. Measure of 2 plus 3 is equal to 180. That's the definition of supplementary angles. These were given to us together in the two-column proof, but I've just separated them for the flowchart proof, and then they both end up going to the measure of angle 1 plus angle 2 is equal to angle 3 plus angle 2. That's a transitive property of equality. And then angle 1 is equal to angle 3. That's a subtraction property of equality. You're subtracting angle 2 from both sides. And then angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Definition of congruent angles. So that's how an example of a flowchart proof does look like when you have to create it. Alright, so now, writing paragraph proofs. So we just learned about flowchart proofs, and now we're going to learn all about paragraph proofs. So another proof format is a paragraph proof, which uses the statements and reasons of a proof as sentences in a paragraph. It's pretty self-explanatory. It uses words to explain the logical flow of the argument. Instead of the boxes and arrows in the flowchart proof and the columns in the two-column proof, you just use words and sentences. Alright, before we go on to that, we have 2 more postulates that we need to learn about. So the first one, linear pair postulate. If two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. then the vertical angle postulate. If two angles are vertical angles, then they are congruent. So here's what a linear pair would look like. Two angles that sum up to 180 degrees. They are supplementary because they form a linear pair. And then vertical angles. Angle 1 and 3 are vertical, and angle 2 and 4 are vertical because they're opposite from each other. Alright, so proving the vertical angles congruence theorem. So, you're given a paragraph proof to write a two-column proof. You're given a diagram. You're given that angle 5 and 7 are vertical angles, and then you have to prove that angle 5 and 7 are congruent angles. Pause the video, give it a shot, come back for the right answer. Alright, so let's take a look at our paragraph proof. It says angle 5 and 7 are vertical angles formed by intersecting lines, as shown in the diagram. Angle 5 and 6 are a linear pair, and angle 6 and 7 are a linear pair. Then by the linear pair postulate, angle 5 and 6 are supplementary, and angle 6 and 7 are supplementary. So by the congruent supplements theorem, angle 5 and angle 7 are congruent. Now let's write this in a two-column proof format. Alright, so we have our statements and reasons. Angle 5 and 7 are vertical angles, that's our given. Angle 5 and 6 are a linear pair. Angle 6 and 7 are a linear pair. That's our definition of linear pair as shown in the diagram. Angle 5 and 6 are supplementary, and angle 6 and 7 are supplementary. That's our linear pair postulate that we just learned about. If two angles are a linear pair, then they are supplementary. And then finally, angle 5 and 7 are congruent because of the congruent supplements theorem. As you learned, if two angles are congruent to the same angle, or supplementary to the same angle, so you can see here, angle 5 and 7 are supplementary to angle 6, so therefore angle 5 and 7 are congruent. Okay, so now using angle relationships. So you're given vertical angles right here, angle RPQ and angle SPT. Find the value of x. Pause the video, give it a shot, come back for the right answer. Alright, so now that you're back, first off, we know that angle SPT and RPQ are equal because they are both vertical angles, so therefore they are congruent. So let's substitute our values of 148 is equal to 3x plus 1 degrees. Next, subtract 1 from both sides, which gives us 147 is equal to 3x. And then divide 3 from both sides, which gives us x is equal to 49. So therefore the value of x is 49. Alright, so now, using the vertical angles congruence theorem. We learned that if two angles are vertical angles, then they are congruent. Write a paragraph proof based on this diagram and the given information. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 4, so this angle and this angle are congruent. And you have to prove that angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent. Pause the video, give it a shot, come back for the right answer. Okay, so now that you're back, so first off, let's look at this. So, we know that angle 4 and angle 1 are congruent, so by the vertical angles congruence theorem, angle 1 and 2 are congruent, and angle 3 and 4 are congruent. By the transitive property of angle congruence, angle 2 and 4 are congruent, because angle 1 and 2 are congruent, and then angle 3 and 4 are congruent, so you're just substituting them. So now that we know that angle 2 and 4 are congruent, using the transitive property of angle congruence, once again, angle 2 and 3 are congruent. You're just substituting different values that we know. So I hope you guys found this video educational. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, I'll come back for more educational videos like this.